Happy Let's Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Georgette. I'm the mom.
And I'm TJ. I'm the son.
And we both study and work in the field of psychology, and we are passionate about sharing what we know with you so that you can live your best life. And today we are going to talk about why we care about what others think about us, right? Why do we care what others think about us? Well, long story short, it's evolutionary. Initially we needed to, as a survival mechanism, we needed to belong to groups. And so what that kind of evolved into is just our needing other people's approvals to help boost our self-esteem.
Yeah, because it's always going to be harder for us to create that self-esteem within ourselves. Oftentimes, we have kind of negative connotations to us because we're always going to be our own worst critics. So it's easier to automatically want to find it in others as opposed to finding it in yourself, because believe it or not, that can be harder from a psychological standpoint.
Right. It's based on how we think other people perceive it. It's a reflected appraisal, really, but it's also our greatest obstacle to self-acceptance.
Preach.
And so the question then is why we shouldn't care what others think. Why shouldn't we? And so I'm going to let TJ tell us why we shouldn't care what people think about us.
Why we should not care what people think. Oh my goodness. Do we have the time? Okay. Well, one of them being is everybody, no matter how close you are to them, they only really know a small chapter of your life, because obviously all the thoughts that we internally go through, you listen to your own commentary all day and no one can ever, relate to that. So everybody is not going to be remotely close to knowing the same story as you. So why should we accept those things, right? Another thing, once again, is other people tend to relay their own issues onto you and their own insecurities and things like that. So that, once again, necessarily can't take it all that much, because it may not even be coming from, you. It's more a reflection of them, right? Quote that we kind of talked about earlier, reputation is what mere mortals think of you, whereas character is what God and angels know of you. So once again, if you know that your intentions are pure, that this and that, it doesn't matter what other people think, because once again, you can just keep spinning your reels trying to get them to see it. But in all reality, the only thing that's important is that you see it, right? If you see it, it doesn't matter what other people think, right? If that person tells this person, does this person, they're all wrong. Because once again, when it comes to what other people are saying to you, there's two things that you can do with it. Actually, there's two conclusions, right? One of them is that whatever they're saying is true. And guess what? That's not a negative. That is you taking the opportunity to actually improve on that, because believe it or not, we can, right? And then second, if it's not true, then you're unharmed either way, right? So it's more of a matter of fact that we just get so emotionally pulled to other people, kind of like what Mom said. We just instinctually love connection, love this, love that. But automatically we can go to the point that we lose sight of what's really important, which is what we say to ourselves, right?
Right. And you hit on a lot of items that I researched and found. It's not their life. It's not their business, right?
I got a quote. What other people think of me is none of my business. It's none of my business.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. I love that. They don't know what's best for you. Only you do, right? What's right for someone else might not be right for you. It keeps you from your dreams.
Ooh, yeah. You're so busy trying to check off their boxes that you're not checking your boxes. We spend so much time doing it externally that it's internally where we need to do the work and check the boxes.
And in the end, you're the one who has to live with your choices, not them. The other thing is people's thoughts change. So if I'm worried about what other people think and they're changing their minds, I'm running around like an idiot, right?
And so quickly do things change. We can even see it in pop culture. One person's hot 1 minute, then they make a mistake, and then it all comes crashing down, right? It's so flimsy. It's so flimsy to the point, once again, you can't even take it seriously. You can't even let yourself get so emotionally attached to it. And that's all that it is that we just get that emotional pull, but we have to, once again, breathe through it, talk about or identify or think about some of these things that we're referring to, because these are the things that from a psychological standpoint is going to create the habit of you not caring what other people think, right? This is something that we need to practice, because automatically what we say to ourselves ends up not being nearly as important as other people say to us, and that is a horrible way to live. So this is us practicing it.
And then another reason why we shouldn't care is life is just too short.
That's too freaking short, man.
Yeah. Also, if you care too much about what other people think, you actually turn people off. It has a reverse effect. People pleasers are annoying.
Needy.
Yes. The other thing is people really don't care as much as we think they do.
Yeah.
They really don't.
An
They're
exa-
over us.
I love that example. I love that example. So say if I'm instructing a group psychotherapy session, I have a stain on my pants. I'm sitting there saying, talking, thinking, man, I got the stain on my pants. Man, they got to see it. Man, they got to see it. Man, they got to see it. But then you go to the other person's point of view, that person's stain, right? It's like, man, I wonder if they can see this. I wonder if they can see this. So you go around the table. It's everybody's worried about something. Like maybe they can see them sweating. Maybe they can see that this, but they're so focused on their insecurities that they're not nearly seeing it as much as you, because we love to make ourselves once again automatically the main character in everybody else's story.
That's a great example. It's a great segue into how to stop caring. And it is true. Keep things in perspective. People are just as insecure as you are. And exactly, just to your point, exactly what you said. The other reason why we shouldn't care about what others think is because it's impossible to please everybody anyway.
Possible.
So just move on.
Yeah. It's impossible to please other people, but we strive for that because once again, psychologically, it can be harder to please ourselves.
Right.
Gotta work on that. Practice it. Conscious self. And that's another thing, positive affirmations, right? I'm strong. This people take it with a grain of salt because, or they laugh at it because maybe they don't necessarily believe that they are strong, that they are good enough. It's a defense mechanism, right? It's like, oh, pish posh with all that. It's like, well, maybe you're not accepting of it.
Right. So the other reason, or the other way to stop caring, is question your thinking and focus where it counts. So instead of maybe thinking, how did it go, or asking somebody how it went, you ask them, well, what could I do to improve?
Always.
Put it in a different light. Questioning how you question yourself is really important. How you question others is important. Letting go of perfection. You are not going to attain it, so stop trying. Getting to know yourself.
Treat yourself, know yourself, right?
Find your tribe.
Find your tribe.
So, and I've always said this, if you are with people who do not make you feel good about yourself, then you are with the wrong people.
And I love that one because, it's like, oh, the people in my life, the friends in my life. Think of it like the amount, your sample size, your group is like 0.00000000001% of the entire population. Go out and find a new group. Go out and find some new friends, right? And whoever says, TJ, it's not that easy. There is Facebook groups all the time talking about freaking hacky sack groups and hiking groups. You can't find something that is going to be in line with some things that you want. It's an excuse.
Yep. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Accept a helping hand. Be your own friend. We've mentioned this before. We treat ourselves worse than we treat other people. So try to be a friend to yourself.
Yeah. When we make a mistake, we shame ourselves. We almost give us criminal records because we remember it throughout all time. But once again, I forgive myself. I love myself. Believe it or not, that's not something that is instinctually said. You have to keep, I love myself. I'm this, I'm that. When you get those, and that's another thing, when you get kind of anxiously driven, you start to have very, very quick thoughts. And when that happens, they could be very, irrational. Like one example is once again, group, I made a mistake and I said it jokingly, but the verbiage was, I am a waste of human life. It's, gosh, I'm such a waste of human life. And it was jokingly, but what if I was in a negative emotional state? It would have been very, very damaging to me. So I'd have to identify that maybe that's where I tend to go from a negative standpoint and say the opposite. How am I not a waste of human life? And I start thinking about how I'm not a waste of human life. Thinking about the people in my life who don't think that I'm a waste of human life, right? And that helps me come back down. That's what you have to do. Identify where you can go off, how you can come back.
Right. Again, another perfect segue. He's talking about shifting your thinking, knowing what your values are. Maybe you said something
Boundaries.
that wasn't quite how you wanted it interpreted, but you know your value system, you know where you're at, you just improve upon that the next time. Don't beat yourself up because your intentions were good.
The journey is always more important than the destination. An example of that, I had a buddy who came to me and he felt so bad. He felt like an asshole because he made a joke that was taken too far. And then we kind of talked about it, and it wasn't because the joke, it was he was upset because of the person being upset. And then obviously if he would have said the joke and that person would have been happy, guess what? He would have thought he was hilarious and this and that. So the intention was to make a joke. Just because someone takes the joke a little bit too much, and obviously he identified with me and he said what the joke was, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. Once again, I'm an asshole. But no, it's that person is probably just a little bit more sensitive due to either something recent or just traumatically or baseline wise. They just are a little bit more sensitive, right? Just because he tried to make a joke and that person ended up getting hurt and it wasn't that bad of a joke doesn't make him an asshole, even though he thinks he does because it's coming from somebody else, right? So It's all about the journey. If your intention is pure, sometimes that's over the destination or where you end up going, right? Because you can't, that's black and white. There's a lot of gray areas in this psychology thing.
But also, like going back to what we said earlier about your tribe, think about how often that happens. I mean, if that's a one-off instance with this person, you know, we all have moments where we're a little bit more sensitive than other times. But if this is something that you continually feel with this person, maybe you need to find someone who has the same sense of humor as you do, right? But again, with shifting your thinking, you want to stay in your lane, mind your business, right?
Stay in your lane, right? Stay in your lane towards your goals.
The only thing you can control, right? Understand that you have full ownership of your feelings. Know that you are doing your best, and know that everyone makes mistakes. Those are just some shifts in your thinking you can do to help stop caring about what other people are thinking. Something else you can do is you can desensitize yourself. Think about the worst case scenario that might happen. Oh, if I wear this new shirt and I'm not sure about it and others laugh, I will survive. I will get over it.
Marcus Aurelius used to start his mornings with a negative meditation. I don't necessarily recommend this, but yeah, he would go through his day and think about, how can this possibly go as worse as it can? That was worded terribly, but you guys know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I do know what you mean.
Yeah, no, so he would see the day and worst that it could possibly go. He would open his eyes and say to himself, first, there's no way it's going to be that bad. And I still survived all of that. Today's probably going to be a heck of a lot better, right? And kind of going back to understand that you have full ownership of your feelings, right? Oftentimes we don't feel like that because the feelings are so emotionally driven. Whenever stimuli comes, whether big or small, we get that emotional drive first, and then we think the thoughts come, right? But we need to utilize these new thoughts, these new conscious thoughts in the moment with diaphragmatic breathing to help relax that sympathetic nervous system so that we're more accepting from a frontal lobe standpoint so that we can get these new thoughts in, because these new thoughts are what's going to dim down those emotional responses, right? Because we're so emotionally driven, These thoughts help slow us down. And then the more that you practice, the easier it comes to come up with answers, right? So once again, I didn't plan for any of this. I kept coming up with perfect segues because I'm lucky enough to be in a profession where I get to kind of go through 8 hours of therapy a day just with myself as well. But it's practice. Practice those negative situations. Practice role play with the scenario and this and that, because there's always a way that you can improve from a psychological standpoint and just, make yourself feel better, because it is all up to you. You have to sometimes cognitively pull yourself out of the gutter, because sometimes we get stuck down there very easily. Yeah. So that's what we're just working on doing. And eventually it gets to the point that you just get annoyingly positive, annoyingly rational, and people hate you. That's me.
One other thing on the list, how to stop caring about what other people think. And I thought this was interesting. Pray for criticism. Because it's not the worst feedback. The worst feedback is it's not false. Getting any, right? Damn, that's deep. It's people not caring at all, right?
So once again, how do you look at that? Your immediate response, oh my gosh, I'm this. Hold on. First off, those thoughts are probably being a little more rational and you probably jump to conclusions. But if anything, all those things, I'm this, I'm that, you can work on that. Once again, it's better to know if it is true. Breathe through it, say, guess what? I can work on this, because you can. That's another thing. We feel like we're like, I'm just always going to be negative. I'm always going to be this. I'm always going to be that. I have seen changes in people that are just, you can't even explain. It's just because of their change of cognitive processes. It's amazing how beautiful it can be, how hard it can be, but this is where it starts.
Right. Make a growth list. So this would be a list of things that make you uncomfortable, and do them. Exposure. And when I was typing that in my notes, I thought, this process, this podcast that we've been doing really was a growth opportunity for me. It was really, I think I mentioned this very early on in our podcast. I feel very vulnerable because I make mistakes. I make a mistake in every segment, and I know this. I notice them. And they're out there forever for anybody to see. Forever. And I'm so making myself vulnerable. So that was really, really uncomfortable. I had to get to a place where I'm okay with, just being me and making my mistakes and not caring too much about what other people think. So challenge yourself. It's really fulfilling. Yeah.
You talk about from a cognitive behavioral standpoint, fear is emotion that we all feel quite easily. And everyone asks, how do we get through it? The only other components outside of the emotional being felt are thoughts and behaviors, right? So behaviorally exposing yourself, not necessarily to the whole thing, but another thing is you can make a ladder, ways that you can expose yourself to. This is a worksheet that you can do. Identify your biggest fear and then a work or things that you're
hierarchy.
avoiding in this, and a hierarchy of things that you can continue to expose yourself to. Once again, because it's not because your current thoughts are what we're trying to train now. We're not trying to let those past thoughts, those past baselines make their way into your life now, because it's more likely that they're fears, because whenever they get triggered, once again, you get into that response where it's more subconscious. Your brains are going so quick that you can't necessarily get your own conscious thoughts in. And we just think these thoughts are accurate and true and true and true. But for the most part, they're not.
Another thing that they have on the list of how to stop caring is travel alone. And I thought this was interesting because TJ spent the summer traveling alone.
Oh, shoot, I just spilled water. What are we talking about?
We're talking about you traveling alone. What did you learn about yourself being completely isolated from anybody who cares?
Okay. I'll tell you the one big thing that I learned from it. So for those of you who don't know, because I like to say it like this, I went to 26 countries in 2.5 months. I met up with a buddy in 2 of the places, and then I met people kind of along the way. But the one thing I learned, because you're here, and as you go through, like, man, do I want to be in Arizona the rest of my life? Do I want to be here? Do I want to be there? And then as I was going to these other places, the most beautiful places in the world, and it's like it doesn't really matter what your external is, because I got into funks, I got into I got depressed, and I got all these things, and I'd have to snap out and say to myself, dude, I'm in Italy right now. How am I feeling this way? Because once again, it's so much more about the internal than it is about the external, right? Mm-hmm. And the more that you can spend time with yourself, not necessarily the isolation standpoint, but you feel comfortable in being by yourself, the easier it's going to be for you to feel comfortable around other people, right? Mm-hmm. So, because it's very important to be able to do that by yourself. And so I came back learning, first off, a lot more gratefulness for Arizona, but just if this is where I am, this is where I am. I can travel, I can do this, and just a lot of learning, a lot of thinking, a lot of journaling, and you come back and everything just becomes a little bit easier to kind of get through from an emotional standpoint,
Perspective,
yeah, right?
Nice. All right. So this week that we would like you to try to make decisions and behave without regard for other people's approvals, and see how that feels. Notice that the world didn't end, and you might feel pretty good about yourself in the end. So until next week, have a great week, and we will see you next Let's Talk About It Tuesday.
Yes. Boom.
And this is where I look for...
Move it around. Stop.